My name's Matt, and I will be talking with Sebastiano Armeli about engineering leadership at major tech companies, exploring cultural differences and management frameworks.
I think it will be a really interesting talk because of your experience. You are Italian, but you are based in US. You work for
hmm
organizations like Spotify, PayPal, Pinterest, Snapchat, Upwork. So I mean, if you are working in tech, if anybody is working in tech, they probably know all of those organizations, right?
I think so. I hope so.
um, yeah, and as an engineering leader, I'm just, I want to state like a really broad question. Like if you think about those organizations, right? And I bet you have those aha moments as an engineering leader that you took from those organizations. Maybe you could recall some of those aha moments for you that have been significant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you like Spotify, I would say really understanding the Spotify model. And back when I was there in 14 to 17, the Spotify model with chapter guild tribes that was pretty big. There were lots of videos, famous videos about all the agile processes that we followed. And even though lots of companies moved away from that model, it was a great experience to just be there at that time and really like see a different perspective on engineering management. Really the focus on people management and leading people based on technology affinity, like for example in the case of chapter leads, it was different from what I saw then in other companies. That was a Spotify. A Snap, I would say the aha moment was um the aha, sorry, not the aha, was discovering the overall creativity across the company and how really like a design-led company operates. Like I do remember the design sprints that we had a Snapchat that were really feeding into the way we're building features, and the level of creativity at that company is incredible. Um, at PayPal, I would say like kind of discovering the number of stakeholders that you had to deal with every time you had to release a feature. Um, you know, risk, compliance, payments, security, and really like the rigor around project and program management. That was really pretty noticeable. And of course, bigger company. At Pinterest, I would say they focused on data and how really product engineers, they are really involved in understand the data. Like an example is like the readouts they were run by engineers, which is incredible. And also, I would say they focus on machine learning. Like, you know, half half of staff was even maybe more machine learning over engineering. So definitely like really cutting edge there on AI. Um, and then Upwork, I would say how remote work can be effective, even with a workforce which is mostly made of freelancers.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Happy that you remember so many of those. um, and I usually ask the next question, let's say in the opposite way. I mean, I'm always interested in the working culture and like engineering culture. And I think in Europe, we brought a lot of things from the US, the best practices in establishing the engineering culture. But from your experience, because you worked a lot and you work a lot with the company space in US, and are there some things that you as engineering leaders could learn from European leaders? Like, what is your
Mhm.
perspective here?
No, a good question. I think US leaders could learn more, could learn to take more vacations like European leaders. But jokes aside, the thing I actually worked all my career in the US and then in Australia. I worked in Italy for like 6 months. So I'm kind of a bit detached from how really like people work in Europe.
Okay. It makes sense.
Even though I'm European.
Yeah. So I totally get it. I totally get it. So you are more of a citizen over the world, or like the...
Well, I mean, it just that like my work experience is mostly being either in Australia or in the US. So like I almost don't know how people work in Europe, like in a professional environment. I think my gut feeling is definitely that in Europe there is be more a theoretical approach to things versus the US is just more practical in general. So maybe that's what the US leaders can learn more, is having just a bit more, starting with more an academic, more systematic approach and less practical sometimes. But
I like the first answer about the vacation. Don't get me wrong. I think it's really important to have a rest. So, but jokes aside, another thing that I wanted to ask you, because I saw that you gave some talks regarding the OKRs, managing teams on the engineering side. Like, I'm just wondering, in general, if you think about the engineering management, OKRs, data, the way of leading the teams, are there things that, or the frameworks or approaches that are typical for you, or you try to share with the audience or the other leaders that you could, let's say, recommend to other leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a bunch of things around engineering management are the fact that the profession really change depending where you are and which company you are. I would say that there are typical like 4 or 5 buckets that each engineer manager has to really work on, and are people management, execution, technical excellence and understanding, product understanding, and then processes. Now, depending on the company, you really prioritize sometimes more, and also depending on the situation, one bucket or another one. So, for example, I can tell you that at Spotify, definitely the people management bucket was really heavier than others, especially when I was there as a chapter lead. At PayPal was definitely more execution. But really, you need to understand how the company operates, and you can get an initial understanding when you interview, for example. But then also in the first 90 days, but also like in general, a good manager, in my mind, should be able to build a functional team. So know dysfunctions, prioritize efficiently, and really sometimes quickly, and make quality decisions. And sometimes not, you don't make decision all the time on your own. You have a team of, depending on if you're a second or third level manager, you have your managers, so you have ICs that can help you in driving decisions. And then the capacity to zoom in and out, I think, is very key. Like, you need to be sometimes more strategical, sometimes more tactical, but especially for a middle manager, it's very key to have that capacity. And then I think the more you become senior, the more you're less tactical and more strategical.
And Sebastiano, now you are your role is director of engineering at the Upwork, and this kind of experience with this company interests me the most. So personally, because I'm running a dev shop based in Poland, and I was always wondering, if you are director of engineering and you have the shortage, let's say you have to deliver faster some some features, or you don't have the skill. I mean, regarding maybe the language, right? So do you use the pool of the engineers there? If yes, how does it work?
Yeah, no, good question. We do hire people, many ICs from our platform, and it's also a way to dog food our product. Said that, we have a pretty intensive screening process around hiring people from the platform. So we do have a central engineering group that does a bunch of screening before even getting to us. So we really keep a high bar for the people that we hire. Our managers are all though full-time and based in the US, most of them. And then, I would say 95% of our ICs, individual contributors, are across Europe, Middle East, South America. But the quality is still high because we do have a very strict screening process. So a bunch of technical rounds, and then when it gets to us, we do the standard interviews, both behavioral and additional technical.
And I will get back to the things that you mentioned before. So it caught my attention, the PayPal, right? You manage all the stakeholders. And when I see, let's say on one matrix, I see the PayPal, and I see another site, I mean the Spotify, Pinterest, Snapchat, Upwork, a bit smaller organization, PayPal. I think it's a huge corporation, and it's already so long on the market that the way how they operate is a bit different. So if you think about those companies, or maybe there is something that I don't see, differences, what those companies could learn from each other, like a PayPal from those smaller, more agile organizations, and then other way.
Yeah, definitely they were pretty different. PayPal, more corporate, for sure. But that comes also with, focus on execution, as I mentioned, delivering on time and budget. So what I really learned at PayPal was sticking with the timelines and being strict around that. And versus other companies, sometimes, you're a bit more fluid, or there is a bit, you can make some scope cut or pushing the timelines, versus at PayPal, the things were running. The project management side was really, I think it was done really well. And also the presence of risk, compliance, legal, security checks on any feature also was, I think, a really good thing. But also it's related to the fact that PayPal works is around finance, right? I think on the other side, I think all those companies, Spotify, Pinterest, Snap, they have great talent, and I think people working at those companies, they're really passionate about the product, and they're really bought in the mission, and they really live and breathe the product. And that was something that maybe on the other side at PayPal, something can learn from those companies.
And during your career, you changed the domain or the industry quite a few times. And I'm wondering, do you approach the different industry or different domain a bit different, or do you see distinctive differences between them? Or, it's we do the software and it doesn't matter so much if this is this industry or this industry.
Now, definitely there are lots of differences in terms of industries. When I worked in monetization, there are lots of domain knowledge that you need to know. When you work in shopping as well, when you work in crypto or wallet, there are specific interactions with third party you need to know. When you work in messaging, a Snap, and now, you have to be familiar with a bunch of technologies like WebSockets, etc. Personally, I enjoy learning a new domain. I'm always open to explore other domains or even going deep, like I'm doing now around messaging. Like my goal is generally just to learn new experiences and expand in my management role. And the way you do that is just accumulating experiences, staying in the management path. That's really what I'm really interested. And also like I feel good that, I kind of going through like different steps in management, like from line manager to manager of managers to director, and I'm not really skipping any steps or, rushing through the path. And eventually I aspire to be an executive.
And last time when we talk, it got my attention. I think you are just only two of like 80 people with whom I talk during those interviews who has the README file, right? So if you're starting a new organization, you have your own README file that you share with other people, with the engineers. So could you tell me and the listeners more about it? What is inside? Like, why do you?
Yeah, that's something I probably started doing 7-8 years ago. It was popular back then, and it's actually public. I think it's for readme.com is a website, but it's basically about my approach to management, my expectation for my direct reports, which now they're managers, but when I started, they were ICs. My personal principles and values, like for example, I value honesty and straight talking. I believe in trust. I don't like micromanagement, but no one likes micromanagement. How to run one-on-ones. I like how I run one-on-ones. How I give and like receiving feedback. Kind of like my working hours. And some quirks, like I drink green smoothies. That health is at top of my priority in my life. Like I do work out every day, and I have some windows where that's my priority. And I mean, unless there's a P0, like no one should disturb me in those couple of hours. So you basically get to know a bit of myself and what to expect.
Makes sense. And during the recession, so like the last year was pretty tough in tech. This year it's like so. I would say up and down. It's a roller. I would. But I think there is more focus on the productivity and flattening of the tech organizations. What do you think about this trend? Or maybe you don't see it happening for a longer time?
No, yeah, not totally. Like I think there is a general need for organizations to be more efficient, and in some cases, I mean, I have to say that there were layers of management that were necessary, and especially in the current time, like because if you're in a growth environment, and let's say you have a senior manager, like a manager of managers between the line manager and a director, which has two groups with two managers. In a growth environment, that can make sense because you expect that group to grow. So that layer can be helpful. But in a recession or contracting environment, it's easy to make the argument that the layer is not needed, and you can just have, you don't need a senior manager between a line manager and a director. That's just an example of, I think some of the differences when you are in a contracting or in a growth environment. And I think some of the decisions and, around flattening the organization, they're around that. And, I think there is a logic around it. I think as long as, we don't go too far on the other spectrum where we think that, everything can be flattened out, the managers are not needed. which I know that some companies have tried in the past, but I'm not sure if that's ever been a successful experiment.
I'm always like to ask my guests about the contrarian approaches, controversial engineering decisions. So maybe do you recall some of the decisions, and you could tell us more about it, like the time when you were part of a controversial engineering decision, and how this involved what you did.
Yeah, I think a controversial decision we took was as that when we were executing on a big re-architecture of the messaging client, and we really decided to do a big pivot in terms of execution. So after 3 months, we were working on a milestone. We decided to stop that and work on a different milestone that would have had a fast delivery of the initial product. And this was because we wanted to kind of not lose the confidence from exec, because it was a really long re-architecture and project. And if we kept working on the initial milestone, which maybe was the most efficient way to execute in terms of the overall project, but it would have taken longer to get to a first MVP. So, I think that decision was controversial because if you look at the overall efficiency of the project, maybe it wasn't the best decision. But at that time, just to keep the confidence of exec and just like to get something out the door as soon as possible, that's why we made that decision.
And how about, what was it like the hardest thing that you have ever done in your career, or do you recall any other situation that was the hardest and you could tell more about it?
I think the hardest for me is always the layoff. So probably laying off someone 2 months after I joined a company. In that case, I'm not saying which company, but the list was already made before I joined, and I'm not even sure if that was the right thing either. But yeah.
I bet this could be really hard, especially then if you want to establish like kind of relationship with the team, and you start like from the point that you are not quite sure about, right? You don't know the context of it.
Right.
I feel like each year we learn something new. It doesn't matter how old we are, and doesn't matter what we do at what organization. And I'm just wondering, in your case, what are your current challenges? What do you type in Google or in ChatGPT to find the inspiration to solve
it? Right now, my current challenge is really figuring out the right topology and charter for my org. I've been doing small tweaks in the last 2 quarters, but I just want to get to a more defined topology. Maybe because I recently read Team Topologies as a book, and I kind of like want to have my org fitting in one of those models. So that's what I've been asking ChatGPT. But I usually use ChatGPT as an example. I also use Claude sometimes to format emails or summarize information. Also, if there is a topic that I don't know, instead of going on Google search, I will ask ChatGPT, and that provides me a starting point, and then I can dive deep, asking more questions to ChatGPT, or sometimes I even go to Google search and back to Google search, just to do more reading based on links. So I think, there is still, at least from the way I use it, there is still a use case where I do like reading the original documents coming from Google search. But yes. Mm-hmm.
The old school way,
yeah,
how we used to learn, how we used to learn.
Right.
Yeah, I have the same. And the last thing that I'm asking all my guests, can you recommend any books resources, podcast conferences that have been particularly helpful to you as a tech leader, engineering leader, director?
Yeah. In terms of books, I mean, a bunch. You maybe you can see behind me. I like The Manager's Path by Camille Fournier, The Five Dysfunction of a Team, An Elegant Puzzle by Will Larson, The Art of Leadership, Mika Law, In Topologies, Good Strategy, Best Strategy, The Cracks, Coaching Habit. In terms of podcasts, of course, aside from your podcast, I listen to the ELC podcast, Modern Manager, Coaching for Leaders. I also listen to other podcasts on more health, like Vidartia or Andrew Uberman's podcast, but different topic. In terms of conferences, recently I've been at Lead Dev. It was a good conference. I've been at the ELC annual, great conference in San Francisco. I've been to Elevate from Plato, San Francisco. Those are good conferences.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the recommendation and all the answer that you gave. It was really insightful talk, Sebastiano. So thanks for today.
Thanks to you, Matt.
Follow Matt and Leszek on LinkedIn.